Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Do not be fooled by that fancy name. It's just me and some friends talking about baseball cards. And today, excited to have on a guest, super collector of the great Eddie Mathews. If you recall, I have had the Spawn show, and I did the 48 Braves show. So I know a little bit of history about the Braves from that time era. But we're going to go into the late 50s and the 60s of the Braves because Eddie Mathews had an extended career. So let's talk a little bit about Mathews. He's born in Texas, but when he's a young boy, his family moves to Santa Barbara, California. And Mathews is a natural athlete. He plays multiple sports in high school, but by the time he's a senior in high school, he is one of the most recruited baseball players in the entire country. And because he can't sign until he's 18, there's a bunch of teams waiting to sign him. He ultimately chooses the Braves, and I'll get into this with my guest, but his father decided that the Braves would be the best team to sign for because he was a third baseman, and the Braves' third baseman, although an excellent player, was getting old. So that's exactly what happened. Mathews comes to the Braves, plays in their minor league system for a couple of years, and then he comes to the Braves as a 20-year-old. In 1952, he wins. 20-year-old in 1952, he wins the job. Has a solid rookie season with 25 home runs, and that would be the last year that the Braves played in Boston. They moved to Milwaukee, and he has a breakout season as a 21-year-old. Hits 47 home runs, finishes second in the MVP voting, and ultimately becomes one of the biggest players in Milwaukee Braves history. Goes through some solid seasons, ultimately wins the World Series with the team in 57. They lose to the Yankees in 58. Mathews plays in Milwaukee for, I guess, the entire time that the team was in Milwaukee, because in 1966 they moved to Atlanta. His career is declining. He only plays 1 year in Atlanta. He's traded to Houston and then traded to Detroit. And it's very nice because 1968, as a injured older player, he only played 31 games, but he was on the World Series roster and played in the 1968 World Series and won a ring with the Tigers. In his final games were actually games in the World Series. Mathews goes into business for a little bit, comes back to coach for the Braves, and ultimately manages the team for a couple of years. In the early 70s, he's the manager in 1974 when Hank Aaron breaks the home run record. So my guest has his own card channel, which will obviously link below and have people subscribe to. Pastor Craig. Craig is a super collector of Eddie Mathews. We met in Strongsville a few weeks ago for the first time face-to-face, and hatched the idea for this show, and here it is only a few weeks later. So let me bring on Craig, and good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Dan. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So, I always ask my my super collector guests generally, like, how'd you get into the hobby? What's your hobby history? Like your collecting story. And some of them the guests are guys who were much younger than me, so they start out in the 80s and the 90s. But you, I believe, are generally my age, so I think we're in the ballpark of the same era. So tell us about your collecting, how you got into it, and your collecting history.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I was born in 1962, and so I was the youngest of three children, and I was an avid reader growing up, but I really struggled with math as a little boy, and so my parents started buying me football, basketball, and baseball cards. Well, that was 1972, and so they knew that I loved to read and I loved sports. And they knew that by memorizing the stats on the back would help with math, and sure enough, it did. So really, it was a struggle with math that led to actually getting cards and collecting cards. And I remember I had 72s and 73s. I had a lot of those, and then I pretty much collected up until about 1978 when I got into high school, and liked girls more than cards, and then driving cars more than cards. And so I collected up until 78, and then 1987 I was in the Air Force, and was buying some diapers for our second child, and saw some 87 football cards in the rack, and I bought them, and I started collecting. And I was hooked again. I really collected from 87 till about 94, pretty heavily. And I thought that I'd found a gold mine, of course, in the 87, 88, 89 cards. And, you
Yep.
know, I was in my mid 20s, but yeah, I collected pretty solid up until about that time. And I've always been a collector, but I really started back in seriously about 4 years ago.
Yeah, I still have one of my Greg Jeffries cards from that time frame. It was
Yeah,
going to make me a millionaire.
right.
So it's funny. I was thinking when the '72 set was your first set. It's you're good for math because it has like a gazillion cards in it,
Yeah, yeah,
but
absolutely.
787 cards or something.
Yeah, yeah,
My first set was 70, and I think it's 660. So I always thought
yeah,
every set was going to have to be 660. So by the
right.
time we got to 72, I'm like, what are all you doing with all these extra
Yeah,
cards?
big sets, that's for sure. A lot of cards to look at.
So our subject today is Eddie Mathews.
Yeah.
We'll see your awesome collection in time. But why Eddie Mathews? What drew you to this particular player?
Yeah, real interesting. We moved to Wisconsin in 1969, and I remember going to my first ball game in 1971, and the Milwaukee Brewers were playing the Baltimore Orioles, and I remember Boog Powell. For some reason, Boog Powell just sticks out in my memory of that. And anyways, we went there, and my dad would always talk about going to see Eddie Mathews hit a home run with the Milwaukee Braves when my dad was in the Navy in 1955. He'd always say I was sitting over there or somewhere, and he'd always talk about Eddie Mathews hitting 2 home runs. He'd always refer to him as a young Eddie Mathews. And so every time we'd go to a Brewer game, my dad would bring up that story about Eddie Mathews. And sure enough, I looked it up, with the internet now, and you can look back, but it was on May 15th that my dad went to that game, and Eddie Mathews hit 2 home runs against the Philadelphia Phillies.
I
And
love that because somebody has a memory, and you're like, well, let me
yeah,
figure out exact, and you can find the game because you go to
right,
Baseball
right.
Reference, and there it is.
Yeah.
Um,
And my dad
that's
has so many memories of that game going from Chicago to Milwaukee on like an interurban. It was a warm day, and they were dressed in their navy whites. And he was one of the last ones to get on, so everybody sat in the seats. And so my dad had to stand up all the way from Chicago to Milwaukee.
ooh,
Well, the seats were a bad leather or bad material, and it kind of bled through onto the guy's white uniform. So they had their backs were tinged like a
oh,
green or like just a brackish type color. And so my
oh.
dad always remembered he was thankful he stood up. And there was 60 or so Navy guys with dirty uniforms at the Braves game. So
He was the clean. He was the clean
he
one.
was clean. Yeah.
Um, okay, so my let's go look at there's the numbers. 512 home runs. Is that the number I'm
Yes.
thinking? Yeah, 512.
Yep.
He hit 512. He hit number 500, and we'll get to it. Not as a Brave, which is kind of
Yes.
not cool, but he hit 500. When he retired, I believe he was the second in National League home runs, right?
Yes, he was. Yes. Yep.
And still holds records for left-handed hitters as
Yes.
Braves, right? So these are my
Yes.
cards. I only have 4 Matthews cards. Of course, the 53 Bowman is his first Bowman card, second year, and is a beautiful shot with the background of the Polo Grounds.
Mhm.
It's a PSA 4 in large part because the centering is a little off, but love that card. Also
Yes.
love the 54, which looks gradable, but one of the corners is dinged up, so that's probably why I never sent it in. But another beautiful card. His 56 up on the top right there also looks gradable. Centering is beautiful, but if you look at the bottom left, the cut, you know how they cut these cards,
Right.
it's very jagged. So I'm like, I'm not going to send this in. I think if it was clean like that and I sent it in, it's like a 6. And then, of
Right.
course, his last card, as a member of the Tigers in 1968. The funny thing about the 56, though, is this is the card that people refer to the card where Eddie Mathews killed Pee Wee Reese.
Yeah.
Because that is, in fact, Pee Wee Reese
Yeah.
getting bowled over at second base. And we could talk a little bit about Mathews and his style of play and some of his
Yes.
contact with other players. We'll get
Yeah.
to that. So let's start with your cards here. So that's the 53. again, the 54 and the 54 Tops, which is also a beautiful card, which I
Yes.
have owned, but I don't currently own.
Mhm.
So tell me about where you got these and thoughts about these really high-end cards.
Yeah, the 53 Tops is a beautiful card. I love the smile, just a beautiful smile on it. And I got that at a Robert Edwards auction uh, here a while ago, and I was really looking for one that was affordable, but yet on the bottom still didn't. You can see the bottom, and there's a few flaking on the black there, but it's
Yeah.
not too bad, and a pretty well centered card. And so real happy to have that 53 Tops. Just a real nice card. Um, the 54 Bowman, I love that with the bat on shoulder. Just a classic pose for Eddie Mathews. And then, of course, the 54 Tops. I love the multi. You got the bat on shoulder plus the fielding and that really nice blue background. I've had that 54 for a little while now, and it was probably one of my first 50s cards that I got for Eddie Mathews. That was graded, and I was real happy to get that.
So next, the 55 in an 8. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I was. I love the 55 card, and I got that on a PWCC auction, and there's not a whole lot of 55s graded higher than an 8. There's a few of them on the PSA registry, and I love that card, and I got it at a fairly reasonable price. I think some people must have went to sleep on that auction, and I put in a reasonable bid. I wanted the card, and I didn't really overpay for it, and so I was really happy to get that. And
Yeah, there was a point with PWCC. It was after they were separated from the eBay platform, and they set up their own auction platform. And cards were going kind of cheap for a little while there. I think they just didn't pick up. They just didn't pick up the clientele. So you could sneak in.
right.
I got a few this way. You could sneak in
Yeah,
a couple of cards that, an 8 of that 55 Matthews. I mean, I don't know
yeah,
what you paid for it. I'm not going to ask, but if you got
yeah.
a good deal on it, that's a wonderful card.
I
And I
think
think
it was a fair price.
he's I think he is uh, underappreciated in the hobby, which helps when you're collecting his cards in high
Absolutely.
grade. Yeah.
Right. And then the
Um,
55 Bowman, I got that at Strongsville. I was
oh,
looking, that was
okay.
one of the cards I wanted to get a high grade on the 55 Bowman, and I had a look at a SGC or no, PSA 8 a few months before that, but we just couldn't make a deal on it. And there's only one graded at an 8.5, none at 9, none at 10. And so the PSA 8 is about as high as you're going to get on that 55 Bowman. And but I just, again, I love that card with the bat on shoulder, the classic pose.
Yeah,
Just a
that
fantastic card.
55 Bowman is one of those sets that I was never a big fan because I thought the
Hmm.
TV thing was kind of a dated gimmick. But
Right.
as the years have gone by, I've sort of become,
Yeah.
more appreciative of them. And I
And the
don't
thing
have
about
this.
that,
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, the thing about the 55 Bowman, that's really the ones that are in good shape. They're really pleasant. They have good eye appeal. When they start to get creased and flaking, not so much because the defects show on that wood grain so dramatically, I guess. So the ones that are graded high, they look really really nice.
So that 56 is a 6.
Yes,
Beautiful example. But I understand you have another copy of that card
I do. Yes, I do.
that you're not
That
going
one's
that you
about. I've
got.
had that for a few years,
I mean,
and
let me
this
see
one
the other
here
copy.
I've had this one since 1975 or six, fairly well creased up. And I know I got it. It had to have been at a garage sale or something like that in the 70s. I picked it up for maybe a buck or two. But this card has been with me throughout my Air Force days, California, Michigan, Texas, Korea. It's traveled the world around, and I still have this card. And there's really no monetary value to it, but it means the world to me.
It has value that's more
Yeah,
important than monetary
yeah,
value, and
yeah.
and
This,
I, I love when I see my old cards, and
yeah.
especially one like that.
Yeah, this is what collecting's really about at the core. It's about the memories and just this card has survived. Like I said, moves, 3 kids, 3 grandkids, numerous cats and dogs. Yeah, it's seen the
Well,
world, so it
I
means a
I
lot
said
to me.
I was on a live show. What's today? Saturday, 2 days ago, with
Hmm.
Mitchell, the White Sox card collector and White
Yes.
Sox fan card collector, and we were talking about, like, what connected him to the Cardinals, and he had a picture from his father, and I was like, this is really what the hobby's all about. It's about
Yeah.
family. So that card for you is family, right? Your
Yes.
dad has these memories. It's about art, because that is an absolutely beautiful card with the whole Pee Wee Reese thing in the background. History,
Mm.
because it has a historically important player,
Right.
and just how it connects to you as a person.
Right.
And
Right.
so, to me, like I said, like, that card is, the money doesn't mean anything. It's
No.
priceless. And
No.
I'm
Priceless
so happy
card.
that you still have it, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of
So
my
am I.
cards that I don't still have,
Yeah.
that I wish
Yeah.
I
Same
did.
here.
Wish
But,
I did. So, um, and now, so this is cool. Are these all the same year?
they are. Yes, they're all the 54 Red Man, and the one, of course, with the autograph, no tab. PSA authentic autograph Redmond. That was fairly expensive, but I was just really happy to get. To me, it's one of my favorite images of Mathews. I love that image. And then Warren D and Clee at the Strongsville show brought me the middle one with the tab on it, and he
Right.
gifted that to me. And so I was
Nice.
just really thankful that Warren did that. And I won this other one here in an auction with no tab, and so I have the three varieties, I guess you could say: autograph, with tab, no tab, and
Um,
really probably one of my favorite cards.
where did you get the auto?
I bought that on eBay, and
Okay.
when I saw that come up on eBay, I thought I really need to get that. And for Eddie Mathews, he's got a lot of signed things out there. Obviously, a player that retired when he did, and he probably made more money signing Eddie Mathews Hall of Fame 78 or 512 home runs than he ever made playing baseball. And
Yeah, yeah. He
yeah,
didn't. And we'll talk about this. Maybe part of the
yeah,
reason why he didn't really live as long as he could have
no,
lived.
you're right, right,
Um, and some of it may have been because he didn't take great care of himself
right. But
as
he,
a player and as a person.
yeah, pretty prolific signer. You can find a lot of his
Yeah.
stuff signed. And
Well, we're gonna get some more of that.
mhm.
Good for you. So, all right. So here's the this is the late 50s, 57, of course, that classic headshot.
Yes.
58 with the green is a 6, nice, and then the
Hmm.
58 All-Star and the 59. Um, so anything to discuss on these on
Well,
this set of cards?
yeah, for me personally, the 57 is probably my least favorite card, but I love it because it's the World Series year.
Yep.
And so that means a lot to me. But for whatever reason, I just don't really care for that card. I love the 58 with the smile, and the All-Star card is great. And then again, you got the bat on shoulder in the 59. I love the yellow background. That's got a miscut, so I'm looking to upgrade that if I can find the right card. But
Yeah, I'm
I
not a
like the
big fan of
59.
the qualifiers.
Yes, yes, but
Just
really
give it a
just
grade.
nice cards, nice
Yeah.
cards.
No, I mean, it's sharp. It's just too much left border,
Right.
too far to the right, but beautiful card.
Hmm.
Registration color, beautiful.
Yes, yes,
So you spoke about the 57 World Series.
yeah.
So this is a great picture, which is funny because it reminds me of a picture I have of Johnny Seen coming off the mound after pitching a shutout in Game 1 of this 48 World Series.
Right.
But this is a completely different team. By
Yep.
57, the only guy who's the same, I think, is Spawn. The
Yeah.
only one
Yep.
who was with the 48 and also with the 57 team.
Yes.
So that is, of course, Matthews, number 41. And then the pitcher
Is
is
Lou Burdette.
Lou Burdette.
He was the MVP of the World Series. Won 3 games. The first pitcher to do that since Christy Mathewson in 1905. So he was the World Series MVP. And then Del Crandall's the catcher. And Matthews has just stepped on third base to make the final out. There's so much in this picture that we'll talk about later on. But
Yeah,
this,
no, we could get into it right now because we're in
okay,
that
yeah,
time frame. Yeah.
sure. This picture here is this is the redemption of Eddie Mathews, in my opinion. In 1956, They should have went to the World Series. They were playing the St. Louis Cardinals, and it was the 12th inning. Warren Spahn had pitched a miraculous game, and Eddie Mathews, the ball was hit sharply to him at third base. He says he should have made the play. It hit his knee. It went off out in the foul territory, and old Stan Musial was able to get from second base to home plate, a winning run, and the Braves were out of the World Series contention. And that game changed Eddie Mathews' life. And it was so devastating that they lost that season. Warren Spahn was crying coming off the mound. Here's a guy with a Purple Heart, Bronze Star, saw a lot of heavy action, in World War II, and he's a seasoned veteran, but he's actually just tears are flowing down his face. And a guy took a picture, came out, a photographer came out, and one of the books said Spahn had one more fastball left in him, and he threw his glove right at that photographer because he was just, it was this kind of interesting when they said he had one more fastball, which he did. And but
Yeah.
the jubilation on Matthews' face, and in one of his books he says he wants to be remembered for that picture right there.
So I looked up the numbers, and the Braves in 56 had a little bit of a lead going into September. And the game that we're discussing where the ball went off of him and went into the outfield they actually gave him a double. It was not charged as an error, but Matthews said he should have had it. And then there's they lose the game. It's September 29th, 1956. The next day, all Brooklyn had to do to win the pennant was win, because they were up one game at that point.
Right.
Basically that was the pennant. So this game, it's the bottom of the ninth. Actually, it's the top of the ninth, because I think the game is in Milwaukee. Am I right about that?
No, they're playing in New York.
Oh, it's in New York. Okay, it's the bottom of the ninth. I think they're up 4-0. Burdett is pitching, a shutout. He's going, his third win of the series. But the Yankees load the bases.
Right.
And Skowron comes up and hits a bullet right at Matthews.
Yeah.
And he snags it, steps on third, and that's him running in after. I think the ball is still in his glove. You can see the white.
In his glove. Yep. Just
and I think we were talking about this before on camera. I looked over who was on base. Madua was on third. That is, I believe, Jerry Coleman, who was on second base. I think that's Jerry Coleman is the Yankee behind there. And then you could see the people running out onto the field. I guess that's probably those feet there are probably like somebody who works in the stadium trying to
Yeah, the fans came rushing onto the field even in New York there at that time, but that picture there really is the redemption of Matthews, because that 56 failure weighed on him just terribly. And
so they win the World Series in 57.
Yeah.
58 is almost the exact same script. It's the Yankees.
Yeah.
It's 7 games. It's Burdett pitching game 7, and the Yankees won. So they won. The Braves won the pennant in 57 and 58 and 59. They finished tied with the Dodgers, and then lost the 3-game playoff 2-0. Right. And that's it for the Braves. They don't really come close again until 69.
Yeah, there's a strong point that can be made that the Braves really should have been in the World Series in 56.
Yep.
Obviously, they were in 7, 8. They should have been there in 59, and they just didn't. But the 56 loss was hard. Even Hank Aaron in his books wrote about just the hardness of that loss.
Part of it was probably also because it was the Dodgers winning again. That was the Dodgers were in the World Series in 52, 53, 55, and 56. The Braves just couldn't catch them. So here we have a fantastic photo of course, Henry Aaron and Mathews, who, as teammates, set the record for most home runs combined. And also, at one point, I'm not sure if this is even correct, had the record, or still correct, he had the record for most home runs hit in the same game as teammates.
I think they still do. Yes.
Yeah. And then, of course, the guy on the right, I didn't look it up. I think I got this just looking at it. It's Frank Torrey, Joe Torrey's
It
older.
is. It is. Yeah, Frank Torrey, Joe's older brother. But yeah, Frank Torrey. Yeah.
Do you have a date on this photo?
Well, I think it's from the World Series in '57 or '58 because of the bunting on the back there.
Yeah.
And I know that Frank never made an All-Star team, and they're wearing their home jersey, so it's got to be in County Stadium. So probably '57 or '58.
And then there's this. So
Yeah,
Mathews was, I guess he had a reputation for being a tough guy on the field.
yeah. Mathews was he was a trained professional fighter. He took quite a bit of fighting lessons growing up, even some jujitsu, karate, and he had a temper between the baselines. And this is the classic photo here where on the right being restrained is Johnny Logan, and he was a spark plug, fiery player for the Braves. And Drysdale had beaten him in the ribs, and of course, again, the Braves and the Dodgers didn't get along. Drysdale's a rookie at this time. He hit Logan. Logan's going to first base, and he says to Drysdale, he says, "I can't wait for you to come into second base. I'm going to get you." And then Drysdale said, "Well, let's take care of it now." So Logan runs out there, but Eddie Mathews is on deck, and he that's Drysdale getting punched in the throat, and he got him about 4 times.
Wow.
And he really kicked his butt, and I think Duke Snyder grabbed Mathews by the ankles and pulled him off of Drysdale. And that's Walter Alston, number 24, the Dodgers Hall of Fame manager. And so yeah, Drysdale, they went back and forth quite a bit.
There's another one. We don't have a picture of it, but there's a fight, famous one where Frank Robinson slid in hard to third base.
Yeah.
And Mathews, and he got the worst of it. And I think Frank Robinson said something like, if I had known he was that good of a fighter, I wouldn't have gone in there. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. It was kind of interesting. He came in hard at third, and they got into a big scuffle, and Mathews pretty much beat the crap out of him. Warren Spahn later said that he hit 4 punches that Muhammad Ali couldn't have blocked. A little bit of hyperbole, but Robinson in the end, it was a doubleheader game. In the second game, he played and his eye was swelled up and bloody lip, and he ended up hitting, I think, 2 home runs to win the game. So, in a way, he got the last laugh.
He got the last laugh. Well, you mentioned Spahn. I don't think it was Spahn. One of the Braves pitchers said something like, and this is good for them as pitchers. He said something like, we're not afraid to throw inside. Because we know if somebody comes out to rush the mound, Mathews is going to be there.
Yeah.
And so, he kind of gave them the confidence to pitch inside, to not worry about, that he was going to have their back, which is the way he kind of was as a teammate.
He was a big protector of all of his teammates as far as, he would tell them to basically get out of the way, I'll take care of business, which he usually did.
And so we come to the 60s.
Yeah. Love the 60 set. I love, again, the bat on shoulder pose and the fielding pose. Just love it with that Braves logo, and I always have liked the 60 All-Star card. Just a beautiful card.
That 60 on the right is, you're right. It's a fantastic card. There's a little history in there. I'm pretty sure that is County Stadium behind him, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, great photo.
Yeah, just love it.
1960 Topps is one of those sets that I've always liked, but I've never gotten up the sort of the energy to complete it.
Yeah.
And now that I have pretty much every one of the main cards in the set in a slab except for Yaz's rookie.
Okay.
I could probably go ahead and do it, but I have other sets that I'm trying to finish first. So, but I will eventually get to 60. Such a beautiful set. So the card on the left is one of those multiplayer cards. What year is that?
That is a 59, I believe.
59, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Del Crandall, Eddie Mathews, Hank Aaron, and Joe Adcock.
Yeah. Adcock was a great home run hitter. He really was. And but boy, all through the 50s, he kept getting hit by pitches and he'd break his hand or break his arm. And, so he was always kind of injured. And then Del Crandall was a great catcher, all-star catcher, hit some important home runs. And for me, he was the manager of the Brewers when I was a kid in 73, 4, 5. So
Yep. Yep.
I always remembered him as the manager, and learning more about him as an adult, I realized how good of a player he was.
Yeah, there's a pretty good argument that Del Crandall should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, advanced stats, but he's got pretty good stats. He played a long time.
Yes.
He was a crucial player on a bunch of important teams.
Yep.
And he was a leader, and obviously he was later on a manager.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think catchers are underrepresented in the Hall of Fame. So the card on the right looks like a modern card.
It's a modern card. It's a Panini. It's the 500 home run Diamond King card, and there's not a whole lot of collectible value to it, but I love the fact it's the 500 home run.
Yeah.
And so I picked that up a while ago, and I like it.
We'll get to the 500. You've got a really nice piece of 500. So here's more early 60s. These are all. I mean, what I was struck by going through all the photos you sent is that Mathews, generally speaking, his flagship cards are all pretty nice cards.
They are, very nice.
I mean, we'll get to one that I had as a kid that I'm not crazy about, but you mentioned the 57. Yeah, it might not be your favorite card, but I mean, it's not a bad card, certainly.
Oh no.
And some of these, I mean, that 62. The 62 with the swing with the bat, into the front of the camera. That's a great shot.
Yeah, really a nice card, and the 61's growing on me over time. That whole set has, but that card specifically. But and I like the 63 and the 64 again with that bat on shoulder pose.
Yep.
And that he was so well known for, and just nice cards.
The slab you got there, the 64.
Yeah.
I think you're gonna have to crack that one.
I think so. I know. It's
BCCG.
It's an older slab for sure.
Yeah, they're known for not being particularly accurate with their grades.
Yes,
Anyway.
absolutely.
All right, so the left is the stand-up. I was on Mike Moynihan's show talking about this set because I think he and I both have recently become converted to it as a really cool set, and I think I'm going to start collecting. I just picked up the Spawn. I don't know, 2-3 months ago. But yeah, this is a really nice card, and the 4 is a good grade for those because they have chipping issues. Yeah,
right. Especially for a Mathews because that's a short print. That's one of the short prints of that, and so it can get really, really pricey the more the grades go up. But I love that card. I love the green and yellow. I'm a Packer fan, so but just that green and yellow background, the player just jumps off of that card.
Yep.
And,
now, talk to us about the one on the right because I'm not familiar with that at all.
That's a Bill and Bob postcard, which was kind of a local Milwaukee type issue, and from the 50s, the late 50s, and they're really hard to come by. Graded, they're pretty tough, and Matt at the card store, he tipped me off to this. He's a big Hank Aaron collector, and so when he sees some Matthew stuff, he'll let me know, and vice versa with Aaron. But that's a pretty tough item to get, and I got that recently, and I just really, really love it. And again, the swing. We'll talk more about the swing, but that's just a classic Eddie Mathews pose there. Classic.
Yeah, he's. I guess I'm assuming that's spring training, unless.
Yeah, it looks like spring training, or maybe even Milwaukee. It probably is spring training. Yeah. So some really good pictures in that whole set.
I'm glad you mentioned Matt because he's in his Hank Aaron collection. He's helping me understand more about those local Milwaukee issues. My Spawn, I thought my Spawn collection was pretty close to being complete. Now I know there's a lot of it.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There's a lot that I got to get to. So, okay. So one of which is the card on the left is from Johnston Cookies.
Yeah.
That is, which year is that? That's 50.
54.
54, right? Okay.
Hmm. And that is a gift from Matt at the card store. He brought that to me at Strongsville. A
Beautiful.
great guy. Just was so overwhelmed by that. Just a beautiful card.
Yep. And I don't know. Is Matthews in? Because the Johnston Cookies has 53 and 54, and I just learned recently that they also have a 55 set.
Yeah, yeah.
I have the Spawn in slabs in 53
Right,
and 54. The 53 is the one that's like a little thinner and a little
right,
taller. It's kind of a weird
right.
shape.
This is the
Um,
only Johnston cookie card I have. I'm always looking for more.
yeah,
I just, sometimes I get over my price point where I want to be at.
yeah.
So,
Well, the 54 was it 54 or 53? One of the years, Hank Aaron is. It's an alternative rookie card, and it's
yeah,
become very, very expensive
I think
because
it's,
people have learned about it.
yeah, very hard. Yeah.
The middle is
And
a
then
tattoo from what, 64?
I
I think
think that was the 66 set. I'm pretty sure from
66. Okay.
66. And
And then
I
we've
love
got
that. And
post
then
serial there on the right, which is a
yeah,
62.
62 post serial on the right. Yep. And
Wow, he had a
just,
nice year in 61.
yeah, yep. So,
32, 91, 306.
yeah, yep.
Yeah, he was still killing it.
He was.
Uh, that's an exhibit on the left.
Exhibit on the left. And I do like the oversized exhibit cards. I usually try to pick them up when I can. I have a Warren Spawn and some other ones, but I just really like that. And the thing I love about that is the logo on the sleeve. I
Yeah,
the size of the Braves logo on their uniforms was just awesome. And Warren Spawn, a lot of his cards, his follow through has that logo,
yep.
and that just, for my eyes, I love it. And then this yellow base path pen on the right here, again, Matt at the card store he tipped me off to this, and
Yep.
that's a really nice one. There's not been many graded by PSA, and nor has there been many sold. I think there's been 6 sales in the last 10 years. So
Yeah, I wasn't
when they come
familiar
up,
with this at all. Yeah,
yeah, when when they come up, you got to kind of snag them, and I was
yeah.
able to get this one here. And,
I I know the 56 has pins. I originally thought that was a
mhm,
pin, but yeah, it's not.
yeah, yeah, just a real nice yellow base path pin. So I
Yep.
was happy to grab that.
So here we go, end of the career.
Yeah,
65 is a nice card. 66 is kind of annoying because
yeah,
it's the Tops did a really bad job on the
very,
airbrushing the hat there.
yeah, very bad.
It's
That's,
like, and I had this card as a kid. As a kid, I mean like a teenager. Obviously I
mhm,
wasn't collecting in 1966. I was 2 years old, but um, I later on acquired this card, and I always thought like, yeah, it's a good card, but like that freaking hat always bugged me.
yeah, yeah. That's probably my least favorite of the cards that he has because of that hat. The
Yeah,
65 is my favorite card. I love the 65 set generally.
yeah.
But then that's the last Milwaukee Braves card, and you've got that palm tree just to the right of his face, and yeah, I love that card. It's just fantastic.
Well, I'm glad you got it in high grade. I mean, a 7, that's sweet.
Yep, and then the 67's taken a while to grow on me. Initially, I didn't like it, but I'm liking it a little bit more and more. You know,
Well, the weird part about it is the team that he's on.
yeah, yeah,
He played
and
1 year in Atlanta, and then they traded him to the Astros,
right,
where he played a half a season.
half a
And then
season,
he got sent to the Tigers because the Tigers needed a third baseman because Don Wirt was hurt.
right, right,
And
and,
the story with 67 is, of course, the Red Sox, the miracle, impossible dream team.
mhm,
Um, the Tigers actually were in the race. It was a 3-team race till the last weekend between the Tigers, the Twins, and the Red Sox. And the Tigers were playing somebody who wasn't very good, and they ended up only winning 2 out of 4 games.
mm,
So that was kind of probably similar to the 56
right,
experience for Mathews.
yep,
And then of course 68, which I do have an example of, but you've got a really nice 7 there. Um, it was a nice way for him to end his career.
it was,
Win,
and
win World Series.
he was pretty used up, physically and baseball wise, he was pretty used up. But Al Kaline so enjoyed having him on that team for the veteran leadership. And
Yep.
there's a story on his biography about when he walked in the clubhouse the first time, and they didn't like Mayo Smith, evidently the manager, and somebody had written on the chalkboard about "we'll win it despite Mayo." And Mathews erased the chalkboard and kind of had a powwow with the team and said, "Listen, we cannot have dissension between players and manager," because he had experienced that earlier in his career in Milwaukee. And
Yeah.
so when he took a stand right then and there and said, "I don't care if you like the manager or not, we're together in this," and that sold him as a leader. And Al Kaline really leaned on Mathews for leadership in that
Yeah.
last
He
year.
had his first year is what, 53, 52.
Yeah,
And he's
52.
I think he might have been playing for Billy Southworth at that point,
Yes.
who
Yes.
was at the very end of his managing career, in large part
Yes.
because of a drinking problem.
hmm
And then Charlie Grimm, I guess, was the manager for a while, and
Yeah.
he got kicked out in the middle of the season. Fred Haney came in, and Fred Haney was
Right.
terrific.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Fred Haney
Grimm,
really brought that team together.
he did.
Um,
Yeah. There was a lot of, with Grimm, we can talk about it maybe later. Well, I'll talk about it now. Charlie Grimm
yeah,
his nickname was Charlie Jolly, Charlie
right.
Grimm. So they called him Charlie Jolly. And he was a hands off manager. These are professional guys. Let them alone. They'll take care of themselves. And that's when Mathews, as a young man, just was out of control.
Yeah,
I mean, they Fred Miller was not an owner, but he was very involved with the Milwaukee Braves, of course, from Miller Brewing Company,
yeah,
and they called it living the high life. That was kind of the code. Let's live the high life. And Miller beer was iced down all the time, everywhere in County Stadium. And Matthews really, that's when he started drinking heavily. And Charlie Jolly just let him go,
yeah, yeah.
And Fred Haney came in and he changed things around pretty dramatically.
And
So,
probably saved his life.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
And
you think about it this way: he's a 21-year-old in a brand new
mhm,
city. He's a California dude, so he's probably
yep,
kind of mellow, and likes to have a little fun. And suddenly he's the toast of the town, literally,
absolutely.
because
Yeah, he was literally the
47 home
toast of
runs,
Milwaukee.
21 years old. So yeah, and it's
Yep,
it's sort of the story of baseball in many
it
respects
is.
with these guys
Yeah,
that
when they came to Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee just turned out unbelievable for him.
yeah,
They gave him cars to drive. They bought their groceries. He went to buy a new suit, and the guy said, he gave it to him for free. I mean, and Matthews talked about in his biography, he couldn't leave the stadium after the game. He had to wait 2.5 hours to leave, and then he would still get mobbed
yeah,
by fans. They just loved him. And he looked at some of the older guys on the team that were married, and they were able to leave, the stadium and go home to a family. And Matthews was going home to a motel, and
yeah,
he couldn't even get out of the lobby without just being, run over with people seeking autographs and well wishes. And that goes okay for a while, but after a while you can't even move. You can't even walk around town. You can't even go to a restaurant. And he became a little bit bitter, and that's where the drinking
yeah.
really accelerated for him.
So we talked about the 500 home run.
Yeah.
This is a gorgeous piece. It has him 500th home run hit on July 14th, 1967 in San Francisco. Um,
Yes.
interestingly enough, as a member of the Houston Astros.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. But kind of sad in a way that he didn't do that with the Braves.
yeah,
Um, it's unfortunate that he didn't. What's real interesting is on the home runs, the 100 home runs. He was the third fastest to reach 100 home runs in his major league career.
right.
And the two people ahead of him are some big names. Ralph Kiner did it in like 114 games, I believe. Or not 114. He did it. Ralph Kiner did it. And then Joe DiMaggio was the other one that hit more home runs, less games to get to 100 home runs. And,
Interestingly enough, his 500th home run was hit off Hall of Famer Juan Marichal.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. off of Juan
And
Marichal. And I know like he hit a lot of home runs off of Robin Roberts. He's number on the 300 there, I believe.
yeah,
Um, so he hit a lot of home runs off of Robin Roberts.
well, he faced Marichal many times
Yes,
in that
yes,
rivalry in the early '60s and into '67 was that home run.
right,
And his final home run off Semmy Ellis was in May of '68 as an American leaguer
right,
playing for the Tigers. And
right.
this is signed and certified.
It is. It
Nice
is.
piece. Where'd you get it?
What's really interesting is the 500 home runs, July 14th of '67, and one of his peers also hit his 500th home run about 45 days earlier, and that would be Mickey Mantle. And
Oh, okay.
so yeah, Mantle hit 500 in I believe May of '67, and Eddie Mathews hit 500 in July of '67. So and,
So, two wonderful magazine covers. Well, actually, one's a magazine, one's a book.
yes, and
Uh,
yeah, the Sport
Um,
magazine. Eddie's been on a lot of magazine covers, but I specifically really like that one with the bat behind and just the beautiful smile. Just really like that magazine cover.
Eddie Mathews is on issue number 1 of Sports
Yes,
Illustrated,
right.
which has got to be hard to find.
Hard to find. I've actually have a safe search on eBay for it. There's one on there, but it's and autographed by Matthews, but that's way out of my way out of
Yeah,
my budget. But
yeah. Issue number 1 of any major
right,
magazine or book or
yeah,
comic book or whatever is going to be
yeah.
crazy.
The book
So,
on the right, I got that on eBay about a year ago. It was written in 1960.
uh
It
huh.
was kind of a series by some different authors, and it was actually in a Kentucky school, so it was like in the school library system. It's a very the very clean book as far as language wise. It's meant for a younger reader, and
So, does it have the Kentucky school stamp
it
on the
does. Yeah, on
inside?
the back stamp, it's got the old last time it was checked out and everything, which is really cool.
I love
And I
that
think it
stuff
was
where you
yeah,
get like a story with the
right.
piece that you have,
Yeah.
a
And some of the
backstory.
pages are folded. You could tell where like they were folded by whoever's reading it to like for their bookmark, you know.
That's great.
Yeah, love it.
So this is another certified autograph piece.
Yeah.
What's the story with this guy?
I I picked it up fairly cheap because of the markings on the shoulder there. And but it's autographed by Matthews and the the artist. It's numbered out of 1,000, but it's got all of his stats to include his fielding percentage, All-Star games, World Series. Everything is broken down there. All the players of the month, so on and so forth. So just a really neat piece signed by Matthews, and that's
So,
actually on my wall behind me. My head's one that it's behind me
oh
where I
yeah, yeah,
film.
yeah. See that back there. So
So
when I
yeah,
was looking at his stats on the back of his '68, I noticed a really cool thing because it has all of his minor league stats, and he
right,
played for Atlanta in the early '50s in the minor leagues for the Atlanta
yeah,
Crackers, and then he played for the Milwaukee Brewers in the minor leagues,
right. Which
and
is
then he came to Boston. So he
yeah,
went from Atlanta to Milwaukee to Boston, then Milwaukee with the Braves, and then ultimately Atlanta with the Braves. So he played.
yeah,
He did like a circular career.
right. Went full circle, and of course he's the famous trivia question: who's the only player to play for the Boston Braves, Milwaukee Braves, and the Atlanta Braves? And that would be Eddie Mathews, because of course Warren Spahn did not go to Atlanta.
Yeah,
So
Spahn went in '65 to the Mets and then
the
the Giants,
Mets,
and then he was
yeah,
done. Yeah, so
yeah,
he missed it by a year and a half.
yeah.
This is this photo is, I don't know why which Tops had put this on one of his cards. This is a terrific
Just a
photo.
just a great photo close up. Just yeah, just I love that photo. I got that on a eBay purchase of just some random photos, and I love it. The one thing for the viewers to notice, though, look at his wrists. You know,
Yeah.
if anybody ever watches the Home Run Derby, the television show from '59 when Eddie
Yep.
Mathews and Hank Aaron competed, Matthews was put together. I mean,
Yeah.
he was a thick broad-shouldered, good-sized man, and he was pretty well put together. So yeah, he was a.
What's
But his
is that?
wrists were.
Is that County Stadium?
I believe it is because you've got the home uniform and then those beams back there,
Yeah,
and it
and
sure
then
does look like it.
looks like it's right there in the city. There's like
Yeah.
city buildings behind it.
Hmm.
Here's another autograph piece.
Yeah, it's like a plaque. It's autographed, and my brother-in-law gave that to me um, about 2 years ago, and there's some significance to that because he gave it to me. My sister had passed away, and he gave it to. He knew I was a big Eddie Mathews fan, and he gave it to me. So I have no idea where he got it. It's a real signature. It's got the certification on the back. So
Uh-huh. And these are the Perez Steel. That's
Red Steel, boy, I really this is my favorite. Again, it doesn't show him batting. And Matthews is known for 512 home runs.
yeah.
His bat got him in the Hall of Fame, not his glove. But I love this picture with Fielding there, and
Well,
just
one of
a
the
beautiful.
things, and I saw this on your channel this week. It was like a cartoon
Yeah.
ad for a gum,
Yes. Yes.
and it's funny because the ad talks about how he worked and worked and worked, and it's true.
Yes.
What's
Very
in that
true.
ad actually true? He
Very true.
struggled at third base in the major leagues. He worked very, very hard. He took hundreds and hundreds of ground balls, thousands of ground balls,
Thousands.
and so what's told in this, was it Beechwood or?
Yeah, I have it right here actually.
Yeah, let's take a look.
And
Yep.
it's a Beechwood ad. You can see he's talking to himself. Slap that ball on him hard, and he's tagging the player, the umpire, with "you're out," and then he's got this conversation over here about being nervous and how to settle his nerves down. And at the end of it, there, I'm sorry,
Beach
got
Nut
Eddie
Gum.
Mathews. Yep, chewing gum, Milwaukee Brave slugger.
Yeah,
And
he
this is
and
from
the stuff about him
1954.
working hard to get better as a fielder is true.
Absolutely. As a matter of
Truth in
fact,
advertising.
after that 56 season, when they came back to spring training in 57, in one of the other more colorful books, not meant for children, Matthews talked about having a bruised chest from taking so many ground balls off his chest because Fred Haney said, we're not gonna lose the pennant because of a poor fielding play.
Yeah.
And that was really when Matthews, after that 56 season, that's when he really became a good fielder.
Yeah.
And he worked hard at it. And even in the minor leagues, he struggled with not really an accuracy of the arm, but he had this weird windup. Like he took him forever to release the ball.
Yeah.
And so they worked with him, and all through the minor league, they brought in different instructors to help him. And he finally became a pretty good fielder.
And then what else we got here? Oh yeah, there's the bat.
That's kind of one of my pride and joys. I love. It's a full size baseball bat, and signed by Eddie Mathews, 512 home runs, and so I'm just really happy to have that.
And then we got a ball.
Got a ball also signed by Mathews, 512 home runs, and both of them are certified. And again, like I said, Mathews was on that autograph circuit with like the Mickey Mantles and so on, and you can find his stuff signed, but it's not a hard thing to find.
Well, I think
really enjoy that.
What year did he died in 1990? I think.
I think it was 2001. I believe
2001. Okay, all right. I'm way off then. We'll go back to the bio in a little bit later, but we got one more slide.
Yeah, just the induction day. Eddie Mathews, 512. It's a certified autograph, and just really runs down all of his accolades, his career. And
so what's amazing to me is the date on this, because Eddie Mathews retired at the end of the 68 season, and he very clearly retired, making him eligible for the Hall of Fame in 1973 or 74.
Well, I have the information right here if you want me to read it off to you.
Yeah.
I
So
find it amazing. In 74, his first year of eligibility, he received 32.3%.
that,
And his person that got inducted that same year, it was Mickey Mantle. It was his first year of eligibility. He got 88%. Now, I'm not going to say that Matthews and Mantle were the same caliber. I'm not
well,
suggesting that. But the writers had it out for Matthews because they had had many run-ins. And in 74, there was something really fresh.
yes.
Hank
Yeah.
Aaron's 715 and Matthews was the manager, and he did not allow the press to come in for like 45 minutes after that home run because he wanted Hank Aaron to enjoy that moment with his family
Yep.
and his friends because him and Aaron had been together since 54. I mean, they had
Yeah.
a 20-year relationship, and he knew that Hank wanted to celebrate this with the people that really meant the most, and the media was incensed. Um,
Well,
Matthews
the
was
other
going
thing
to
about
bench him in Cincinnati, and Bowie Kuhn and Matthews had it out in Cincinnati also. So
yeah, that's right. They wanted him to play
yeah,
he sat him because he wanted the
right.
record to be broken in
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Matthews was Hank's biggest defender early
Yep.
on in Milwaukee with the race situation in the 50s.
Yep.
They
And
were friends. They were not ever tight because their lifestyle was quite different. But Eddie was his supporter, and even as a manager, he had Aaron's back all the
yeah.
way.
Well, one of the things, and vice versa too, because Matthews didn't last the '74 season as the
No,
manager. I think
right.
it was like July or August they made a
Hmm.
change, and Aaron and another veteran, I don't remember who the other veteran was, but went to management and said, "What the ownership?" and said, "What are you doing? Like
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
our guy."
right,
And I
right,
think that '74 was Aaron's last season as a Brave,
right.
and I thought to myself after I was reading that part of the bio is that um, it's possible that Aaron left the Braves in part because Matthews wasn't there anymore.
There was that's part of it, and just the way that the Braves treated Matthews in his firing and also in the trading. They never even told him he was traded to the Astros. He heard it through the media, and
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a possibility that if Matthews was still the manager of the Braves in '75, that Hank would have finished his career
very
as a
well could
Brave
have.
instead of a Brewer,
Right.
which was
But even
it's
looking
funny.
back at his Hall of Fame numbers, in
Yep.
1975, Matthews received 41% of the vote. In 74, in 76, he received 48.7. In 77, he got 62.4% of the vote. And then finally in 78, he gets inducted. So 1, 2, 3, 4 years of eligibility for a member
Yeah,
of the 500 home run club.
yeah.
Um, you know,
Well, they talk about advanced stats, but back then, a lot
yeah,
of it was personality driven,
right, right.
and so it's a shame that he had to wait that long. But him,
And
he was still
everything.
alive. So,
Oh, sure.
I went back and you, sir, are correct. He passed away in February of 2001.
Hmm.
So that means he was in the signature circuit when it picked up in the '80s and then through the '90s.
Yeah, yeah,
So he did sign a lot, which is good for a
right.
collector like yourself because now you have some amazing pieces signed by Mr.
Oh, yeah.
Mathews. So there we are, my friend. That's the great Eddie Mathews.
Yeah, for some of the people, I wanted to share a little bit of his background, which I really find interesting for our collectors. But his grandfather, Eddie's grandfather, was a guy named Bird Mathews, and Bird was a semi-pro player in Texas, and he played with Rogers Hornsby and also with Ross Youngs, who became a member of the New York Giants. And there was
Giants.
two brothers, Ted and Cy Blankenship, who were pitchers for the Chicago White Sox. And so Bird Mathews was known as a great hitter, uh, but he became a railroad engineer because there was more stability in that. And so he became an engineer, but he died. He died after Eddie was in the minor leagues, and then of course Matthews's father was a telegraph operator, and Eddie's dad passed away in 1954 on Father's Day Eve, and
Yeah.
he didn't make it to Father's Day, but Eddie would. His dad couldn't travel, and all through the minor leagues in the '52 and the '53 season, Matthews would go home to California and tell his dad everything. His dad wanted to know pitch by pitch what it was like, and so he had great love for his dad, and his dad was a good ball player too. But Mathews was just a great football player and high school kid in California. And the Boston Braves were very interested in how they signed him. They couldn't sign him to a contract until after he graduated high school. And the Braves agent had been working with Mathews, and they didn't want to make him a bonus baby, which would mean that he would have had to have been in the major leagues for 2 years. And,
Right.
and they said, we want it. So they signed him for less than $6,000. But it was interesting. It was at his high school prom, and Mathews and his date, they snuck out the back door of the motel. They went to another motel, and Eddie's dad was there, his mother and the agent and his girlfriend, and he signed a contract. And then he came back into the motel through the front door, and there were about 25 scouts there waiting to sign him because they had to wait till he graduated high school.
Yeah.
And he said, "I'm signed with the Boston Braves," and they all just left. But yeah, he actually snuck out the back door and signed with the Braves, which was really interesting. And there was a lot of pressure on him to maybe sign and become a bonus baby because his parents were really struggling. His dad had tuberculosis. He was in and out of the hospital. But the family said, "Eddie, don't do it. You'll never, you need to go to the minor leagues to learn to be a fielder." And his mom said, "Someday you'll sign for the big money." And sure enough, he signed a $50,000 contract. And his mom remembered that, said, "Eddie, I told you, you'd make money," which he did. So
he got good advice.
Absolutely.
I love that story about his father scouting the teams to figure out where the best team with the third baseman, who's the oldest guy.
Right. They knew he had great potential, but they wanted to make sure he went to the right place because his grandfather and his dad, both being very baseball-oriented people, they knew that he needed to go to the right place where there'd be a chance to play, but not become a bonus baby.
And then he shows up in spring training and wins the job over
wins the job, yeah.
Former most valuable player, Bob Elliott, another guy who's underappreciated historically, won the MVP in 47, pennant in 48, but by 52 he was like 35 years old.
Yeah.
So Mathews won the job, and they traded Elliott, and then it was the right thing to do because Elliott was gone out of baseball like another year.
Right.
So
what's so interesting, after he signed that contract and graduated high school, he took a train. They went to Chicago. The Braves were playing the Cubs, and he showed up, and they let him do some batting practice. And there was an older guy that was throwing batting practice, an old veteran, a bunch of curveballs, sloppy pitches. And Mathews was in the batting cage for about 5 minutes, and either he'd strike, miss the ball, pop up. He never made good contact, and he was so dejected. As he went back to the dugout, some veteran, he doesn't remember who it was, said, "Don't worry, kid. Someday you're going to eat these pitchers up for breakfast." And sure enough, he did. But his first taste in the batting cage in a major league scenario was not good. And
well, he was right, the old veteran who said that. But this is a kid coming out, 18 years old, who played against high school players. And you don't see those kinds of pitches in high school. So, so there we are.
Yeah.
Greg, thank you so much for coming on to the show, for sharing your awesome collection.
Well, thank you.
And I love, the deep dive into the player part of this channel is one of the things that I really love. And you, sir, have provided some fantastic tidbits and stories and information about Mathews. And it's always, for me, it's important for me to understand the player that I'm collecting. If I'm putting together a personal collection of a player, I want to understand the player, and I want the player to be meaningful. And you've done that. So thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's been just a real enjoyment to do this.
Yep. So viewers, a lot of exciting stuff coming up. I got a message this morning that someone has agreed to come on the show that I'm not going to blow, but it's kind of a biggie. So that's it's exciting to continue to have guests like my guest here today. I will, of course, link to your channel, which is a terrific channel, and we will see you. I think we will see you in Chicago, right?
I will be in Cleveland. Yep, at the National
I'm not
Challenge in
Chicago,
there.
Cleveland, right? Of
That's fine.
course. Yeah.
Yep,
Yes.
we'll be at
We
Cleveland.
I've been to Cleveland a few times in my life, but now I will be there in April and then again in July.
That's
So
right. That's right.
anyway, viewers, we will see you next Saturday. And Craig, thank you so much. See
Thank you,
you
Dan.
guys then.